Hello, hello, and welcome to the Neurogenesis show.
We're your hosts,
I'm Josh,
and I'm Nick.
and thank you all for listening. We have a really interesting discussion for you guys today.
What are we talking about today, Josh?
We're talking about universal basic income.
And what is universal basic income, Josh? What's that mean as a concept?
Universal basic income is a welfare distribution program in which the government gives a monthly or annual sum to every adult citizen in the country, and usually that's enough to cover basic living expenses.
Okay, but how exactly does this work? Who would be paying for everybody's basic income?
There's several different ways. Most people think about cutting budgets from different places or increasing taxes, just different ways of increasing tax revenue.
Okay, very interesting. So is this a new idea? It seems kind of futuristic.
Well, it's 500 years old, futuristic.
No? Yeah, so who was the first person to kind of introduce this as an idea?
Thomas More in 1516, so 501.
And that was in his book Utopia, right?
Yep,
So it is kind of a utopian idea.
500 years ago, it was a utopian idea, but what do you call progress?
Yeah, I guess probably an iPhone would have been a utopian idea to somebody in the 1500s.
Oh yeah, being able to talk to anybody, anywhere, and
Through video, you can
through
see their
video,
face. We can fly across the planet.
being able to see anybody, anywhere.
Yeah, and so even more than him, Thomas Paine and Common Sense, which is basically the manifesto for America and why we should have seceded from Britain. It was the case to the common man. He mentioned a basic income in that pamphlet. He thought that America should provide a small basic income to people to help them meet their basic needs.
Yeah, and the idea has been advocated from people from all different sides of the political spectrum.
Give me an example.
Would you expect Richard Nixon to be a basic income supporter?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, Nixon, he was a proponent of giving everybody a basic income.
Sort of, actually. His proposal was more specifically aimed towards families, but the idea was that in today's money, this would be $10,000, but it was $1,600 would be given annually to that particular sum of people who were in poverty. And the crazier thing is it almost passed.
That doesn't seem realistic. What do you mean it almost passed?
It passed the House of Representatives with a strong majority. It failed at the Senate.
That seems too incredible to me. That could never pass the House of Representatives today, or even for the whole time I've been alive. What was going on in the 70s?
I have no idea.
So people on both sides of the political aisle were voting yes for a basic income program in America.
Yes, labor unions were all for it. People being surveyed were all for it. It wasn't seen as a crazy socialist idea at the time.
Yeah. Well, a few years before that, or a decade before or so, Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about a basic income in his Poor People's campaign,
Indeed.
talking about how that was a necessity.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why it failed was one of Nixon's advisors, Martin Anderson. He was influenced by Ayn Rand, libertarian philosophy, and you know how that doesn't quite mesh well with the idea of giving everybody money. And a study he gave Nixon was referencing a basic income program that they tried in Britain before a revolution 150 years prior to this event.
That's fascinating. It's also very, very unexpected and fascinating that Milton Friedman suggested something like a basic income. It's actually a negative income tax, which operates essentially as a basic income for the poorest people in the economy.
Yeah, and a specific distinction between Nixon's almost basic income program and Friedman's was that while it was more like basic income in the sense that there really wasn't as much means testing, was really only intended for a specific portion of the population, much like Milton Friedman.
All right, so it's a lot of interesting history. Now we need to get into why this is getting more and more important with each passing day. and that is automation.
Yeah, a study from the Financial Times has confirmed that 85% of job losses in 2016 were attributed to automation.
Right. So Trump's going around saying, oh, we're going to make sure that all of these bad trade deals stop taking people's jobs away, without recognizing that 80% of our job loss or so has been due to automation. That's not coming back.
Yeah, how are you going to take care of these people even if there were new industries being created? Because there's going to be a transitionary period where a lot of people are going to be unemployed.
Yeah, and really the trend of all of this is that companies are able to make more and more money, more and more capital, do more and more things with less and less people. And so you look at Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Huge, huge companies. Together, they're worth more than $1 trillion.
Yeah,
But they only create 150,000 jobs among all of them.
that is absurd. And it was the idea in Reaganomics that the largest and wealthiest employers would be the best and most efficient job creators, ones creating the most jobs.
Yeah, but we kind of see that it's the opposite. The best entrepreneurs, the most efficient people with the best companies do it because they can make more and more with less people. That's the real, that's where everything's headed. And this affects like so many different types of jobs. There are articles every day about how a factory downsizes from 200 employees to 60, and their like ability to increase stuff has doubled. So for people to act like, oh, these jobs will come back in another way, people are going to miss human work. Not really. Like we're creating machines, and there are people creating new machines all the time that are taking the place of human hard labor. So what we're seeing is companies with an incredible revenue to employee ratio, and it continues to go up and up as our technology increases. But all of that that's going to create a structural inequality that we can't. It's not temporary or cyclical. It's structural in how that inequality is going to form.
Yeah, I mean, referencing our last show, the median wage for the average American only went up a few $1,000s in the last 20 some years.
Yeah. And so it's something a lot of people think. I mean, you can imagine the argument against it, right?
Yeah, like, you can't just give everybody free money. They'll just quit their jobs and not do anything.
Yeah, and of course there's no such thing as free money. How are we going to pay for it? I mean, if you're really trying to give a full basic income, meet everybody's basic needs in the United States, that's a $4 or $5 trillion program.
Yeah, some would say that's way too high, man.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know what the exact solution is. I think there's a lot of money that's tied up in our system that could be put into this that we just don't see. I mean, there are super, super wealthy people that aren't even on Forbes lists and don't even account for total GDP. Their wealth isn't even factored into the system, so.
That missing little $5.6 trillion isn't included in the
yeah. When the Pentagon, they lost 5.6 trillion. A few years before that, they lost a few trillion. A few years before that, they lost, like a 1 trillion or like a few hundred billion. Like you go back, they keep losing insane amounts of money adjusted to inflation.
Yeah, Robin Hood could probably strike a gold for all we know, man.
So it's, I mean, really, if you're the Pentagon, how do you lose $5.6 trillion? That's more than our budget.
Yeah, that's 9 times. That's actually, forget that, 10, 11 times more than the defense budget.
Yeah, so how do you lose 11 times more than your total budget? That's yeah. But before we get into just some like ideological banter and a little discussion about it, I want to talk about first about the actual experiments that have been done in the realm of basic income, because this is the best thing we have to look at. What actually happens when you put people on a basic income program and you study it? Just having this story in our heads of, ooh, it's not capitalist or and therefore it won't work, or ooh, it's socialist and therefore it will work. Whatever side you're on with that scheme, it doesn't matter. We should be studying it as if it's science, because it is. because you can give people, as Canada did from 1974 to 1979, $500 a month, which back then basically took care of all of your minimum expenses. Did people stop working? No. There were two groups that stopped working a little bit. Women who were on maternity leave and were spending more time with their kids, and male youth. But that exact same male youth had higher high school completion rates, meaning that they were, instead of being forced to go right into the workforce to make an ends meet, they realized that they could actually pursue an education for themselves because they were able to take care of their basic needs with the basic income. One other thing that you might not predict, but this is why we do studies, this is why we should do studies so that we can actually see what happens instead of just making up stories in our heads, is because hospitalization rates fell by 8.5% among the 10,000 people.
I literally have no answer to explain as to how that happened. I guess that little sum of money meant they had healthier lifestyles.
Yeah, you're not.
Or would have encouraged healthier lifestyles.
Yeah, you have a little bit of money to spend maybe on a better meal instead of McDonald's or something. I don't know.
Perhaps.
I don't know exactly. But in another basic income study in India, much more recent, from 2011 to 2013, they gave 6,000 people in rural India $4 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually 40% of their subsistence. So they need $10 a month to survive. And they were given $4 a month. What they saw was people didn't stop working. They saw improved food sufficiency, improved nutrition, an increase in the overall livestock, reduced instances of illness, improved school attendance, no increase in alcohol or drug consumption, and people were 3 times more likely to start their own business.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like that might be a really good, reason why an entrepreneur might support a universal basic income, which actually makes me think of Elon Musk, who is a supporter of universal basic income. Because realistically speaking, me and Nick were talking about this earlier. A lot of people would actually just wonder, do I enjoy the job I'm doing? Because realistically, that basic income sum, that's not going to be enough for you to actually live comfortably on most of the time.
No. And that's not the point of it. The point of it is, what America was founded on, which was more than just liberty. It was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In a lot of ways, I feel like basic income brings back life, an unalienable right, because you don't have to work to justify your own existence. You don't have to make a wage to justify your right to eat food and to drink water. And the pursuit of happiness, because once people are freed from thinking about, I have to make a wage to do what I want to do, which is survive and maybe take care of my family, people are going to start asking themselves different types of questions, like, what do I want to be doing?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the best way I could contribute to the world? What would make me happy? And that's different.
Yeah, and that really small sum of money, might influence you to make that investment in yourself, and then potentially just start up your own enterprise.
Yeah.
Small business, in theory, could boom under a basic income program.
Absolutely.
It's just tough, man, because $4 to $5 trillion, man, just for the United States.
Yeah, just for the United States.
For 1 year, Nick. Can we do that?
It does seem a little bit out of hand. I think what I would immediately support would be not 100% substance. I actually would like to see more experiments first with 100% substance and see what that means. But I would really like to see something like what they did in India, but for all Americans, just 40%. That means that theoretically you could, be in between jobs for a month or two and actually be okay. I think that would make a huge difference in people's lives. At the same time, it could lead to some inflation, but I think that kind of all balances back around. I think one of the reasons that it's really important is because our current system is set up in such a way that the people at the bottom work 40, 60 hours a week to to make everything that they have, and then you basically spend everything that you have, and it kind of all funnels into the same sources. This billionaire investor class, these few hundreds or thousands of people who have this huge excess of wealth. And because of the ability to evade taxes overseas and the ability to not pay like corporate taxes and whatnot, that class of people don't have a check to send a part of what they've made back into the cycle of the economy. And so they're basically strangling the entire economy the more and more money that they make and hold on to.
Yeah, and realistically speaking, even from a standpoint where you think that that might even be a good thing, basic income might still not be bad for you, for the simple reason is that what are these people going to spend the money on?
Yeah.
Stuff you sell them.
Exactly. And, it goes back into the idea that somebody who's a billionaire, how much of their money do they spend a year? Not a very high percentage. Like if 1% or something like that, they just hold most of their money in the bank. Whereas someone who's poor spends 100 to 110, 115% of what they're making because that's what they need to survive. So if you increase, and this is the same argument for increasing the minimum wage. If you increase the cap on what they're making, they're just going to be spending more money into the economy. It's a stimulus to the economy. Businesses act like it's going to hurt the economy so much because we're going to have to pay more and that's going to strangle us. But it's actually the exact opposite. People are going to have more money in their pockets to be able to spend at your business.
Sounds like the Kanye West principle.
What's that?
And you know white people, get money, don't spend it. Or
maybe they get money, buy business.
I'd rather buy 80 gold chains and go ignorant. I know Spike Lee gon' kill me, but let me finish.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, realistically speaking, this all just goes back into the idea of our idea of work. When you talk about the implementation of a universal basic income.
Yeah, it would absolutely kind of redefine how we think about work in our society. Because work, for most people, and when most people think about what is work, it's always something that makes you a wage.
Yeah, something you need to do or starve to death, essentially.
Yeah, but that idea of work discounts the type of work we do in the community with our friends, with our family, work we do in the house. That's all work. That's not nothing, but it's not something that you get a wage for, so it's not considered to be work.
Bertrand Russell said back in around 1919 that he supported a universal basic income because you couldn't quantify your contributions to society. There's things you do in the community, in the home that just aren't accounted for in a monetary system.
Yeah, absolutely. And a basic income would kind of give people, their due reward for just being members of the community.
Yeah, and I would honestly argue that the reason why the studies that we haven't really seen any effects on productivity or unemployment is because these people are more likely doing what they want to do. Because that safety net encourages you to spend more time to find a job that might suit your interests.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a little bit naive to think that there's going to be all these people who are just, I'm never going to work again because I'm now able to take care of just some basic minimum things. Work is important for humans. The ability to work on what you love, to see your work out there in the world, that's one of the most satisfying things that you can do. So to argue that people are just going to stop doing that, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's almost like a form of bad faith, referring back to the first episode, where you just assume that humans are supposed to be a type of way, rather than just trying things out and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like that's enough. I feel like we're out of time today.
Yeah, that'll do it for our short discussion today on basic income. Very important idea. Seeing it more and more discussed every day, as it should be.
Yeah, definitely. Tune in next week, guys, for the next episode of the Neurogenesis show.
Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe. We got more coming your way.
Definitely. Thank you for listening, everybody.